What's up? Welcome to Cooking with Stub. So today we're making shepherd's pie. Shepherd's pie by name is made with lamb. If you're using beef, that's a cottage pie because, well, cows don't need shepherds, do they? So saute up you some onions and garlic, and then throw your lamb in. Brown that up real nice. I like to add a little bit of rosemary and thyme to mine, but you don't have to do that. Then you're going to add your peas and carrots and your diced tomatoes. I like to use fire roasted diced tomatoes. I think it just adds a little more depth of flavor. You can use regular if you want. After you've incorporated that all together, add your 2 packages of brown gravy mix. Now, I only use water for 1 pack of brown gravy, and to be honest, I probably don't even use all the water that it calls for. That way, your filling will be good and thick and super savory. I don't drain my lamb either. I know lamb is a fatty meat, and it makes a lot of grease, but damn it, fat is flavor. You know what I'm saying? So after you've mixed in your dry beef gravy mix, um, go ahead and pour half the amount of water in there and let that cook down a little bit because it's basically got flour in it and it's going to thicken up anyway. So I use a 9 by 13 Pyrex pan. Don't grease that thing down or nothing. And I use store-bought pie crust because who's got time to make real pie crust? And honestly, I can't make real pie crust. So make sure you get the whole bottom of your pie or your Pyrex dish covered. I'm gonna tell you right now, the best pieces of this pie comes out of the center because the crust is doubled up. Just letting y'all know, corners are good and everything, but in the middle is where the double thick pie crust is. So just a little heads up. Make sure your crust is all the way around the top. You want it to stick up a little bit. That way it looks pretty. After you've molded your pie crust into your pan, go ahead and I like to do it grandma style. I get a fork and I go around the edges and make the little marks like my grandmothers used to. Again, you don't have to do this, but it does make it look pretty, and you see it before you taste it. And if it's looking good, then it just adds to it, I guess. With your mashed potatoes for your shepherd's pie, I use 2 sticks of butter and a quarter cup of half and half. You definitely do not have to use 2 sticks of butter. That's just how I do it because the higher fat content will brown up your potatoes real nice on top of your shepherd's pie after it comes out of the oven. So get your potatoes all mashed up. I like to leave the skin on too. Just it adds a little bit of color, a little more texture. And who doesn't love some red skin potatoes, right? Basically, you're making whipped potatoes. They're not really mashed, and they're They always turn out really nice. This is important. Whenever you're putting your mashed potatoes on top of your shepherd's pie, do not just glob big gobs of mashed potatoes on there, because your potatoes will sink to the bottom. Use a tablespoon, and it's going to take a little while, but it's going to be worth it. Just do a spoon at a time. Be sure you cannot see the meat through the potatoes. You want even coverage. Just make sure you seal it really good around all your edges and everything. If not, it's going to bubble out. It's going to make a big mess. I mean, it's going to bubble regardless. But if you have a good seal, trust me, if you don't get a good seal, you're going to know it. Take your little spatula thing, smooth it out, make it all nice and pretty on top. Now, after I smooth it out, what I do is I cut little hash marks in the top of the pie because, well, it just looks good. And I also put a little bit more butter on top of the mashed potatoes because, I mean, I like using butter. So there's that. And, I mean, you can't go wrong with just a little more butter. This is definitely not a healthy recipe. I don't cook healthy. I cook good. So I go from corner to corner whenever I put my hash marks in. That way it looks like a proper pie, I guess you could say. But it does. I mean, all this is just aesthetic. It's definitely not necessary, but it does come out looking pretty. I'm just glad you can't see my face right now because I've probably got my tongue sticking out. I have to try to work on that. So after you've dug all your hash marks in there and put your butter on top, go ahead and bake that in the oven for 450 degrees for 35 minutes. Shoo the dogs away. And sometimes it'll take a little longer depending on how dense your mashed potatoes are. Sometimes it'll take a little less. Mine came out perfect 35 minutes. Leave that thing to cool until you can touch the Pyrex pan and not burn the holy hell out of yourself. So, yeah, that's shepherd's pie, kids.